will I be able to use this?
Do you have a presentation on that computer?
No, it normally runs off of that one.
Then you don't use it.
Close that one out and just open that one.
Okay. Okay.
You're gonna run it.
Okay.
They said we can go, so I think. we're
Okay,
good.
so we're gonna call the meeting back to order. And we're gonna say that Commissioner Bevel was absent for the approval of the minutes. And so that passes 4-0. Okay? So now that we're through that, thank you, everybody, for bearing with us during this time. You know, there's obviously a lot of items on the agenda, and many of you have waited many weeks for us to have a planning and zoning meeting so that we could look at your cases. And I appreciate your patience as we worked through the technical difficulties tonight, or at least attempted to. The one thing this is going to do, and I just want to be upfront with everybody, there's only 4 of the 7 commissioners now present. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but that triggers a supermajority on every vote. So you will have to have 4 yes votes to pass.
Right, in this case, the rules of procedure require 4 affirmative votes for any
Yeah.
motion to be considered a recommendation for
Okay.
approval.
Thank you.
That's right.
A 5th commissioner is in the area and may or may not make it at some point. If your case comes up and you would feel more comfortable tabling it till the next meeting, just please let us know that, and we will certainly do so.
I just want to add, so we have a work session scheduled for 2 weeks from today. If it's,
Yeah.
if it is requested to be tabled, you, as the commission, can say it's to that meeting in 2 weeks rather
Yeah.
than waiting 4 weeks
Yeah.
for the regular meeting.
So since we went through this tonight, if you choose to table to avoid the 4-person vote, we would have a regular meeting after our next work session in order to hear your case with obviously more commissioners present.
So can you explain a little bit what that why that matters from a city council standpoint?
Yeah, from a city council standpoint, so if we motion to approve, I guess, you know, any of these cases, it would take all 4 votes affirmative yes to say we have sent it to city council with our recommendation. So if it's 3-1, it doesn't pass. So that's what we're left with. The circumstances are what they are, but I want to make sure everybody understands that option when you come up to present. Okay, so secondly, I'll just give a quick walkthrough on how it works. The staff will present the case. We will ask the applicant to come forward and speak on the case. At that point, I will open the public hearing. If you would like to speak during that, please fill out a speaker card, and you can hand that to Ari right over here. When you come to the microphone during that, please say your name and address for the record. I ask that you take your time and get all your thoughts out during that time, because once we close the public hearing, that's closed. And then we will ask the applicant to come up and address any concerns that have come from the public hearing. We don't reopen it time and time again. So please take your time and get your thoughts out. There are the green, yellow, and red buttons. Those will, can you tell me what the timing is on those?
5 minutes. It gives a warning at 1 minute.
Okay. So it's 5 minutes long. If you need to continue going to finish your point, just please be respectful of everybody's time and, this evening. At that point, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners can discuss, we'll request a motion, and then we'll vote. So with that being said, We have a long agenda tonight, and we're already 45 minutes late, so I'll request staff to present 4A.
All right, thank you. Again, I'd like Ben Briner, Director of Community Development. I also wish to thank everyone for their patience tonight. So this first item is a request to rezone from the R40 Single Family Residential District and the Agricultural District to the RE Single Family Estate Residential District. This is on two properties at 108 and 7204 John McCain Road. We have an aerial photo of the two properties. They are, as I stated, zoned agricultural and R40. This is a request to go to our residential estate district. Both are designated for residential use. They are currently developed with single-family homes. The reason for this is really an adjustment between the two properties for the shared property line. There is a plat associated with this request, which is the next item. But in order to accomplish that, there was a need for a rezoning. The residential estate district is the most appropriate. In fact, for both of these properties, both will comply with all of the minimum standards for the district. And this is the zoning exhibit, and it's a little hard to tell on this, but essentially there's a shared lot line that will be relocated. And this rezoning is just to accommodate that relocate or realignment of the shared property line. We did send our notices out to all properties within 500 feet, did not receive any response back formally, and staff does recommend approval of the request. It does meet the intent of the designation assigned in our comprehensive plan destination Colleyville.
Okay.
I can answer any questions. Okay.
Questions? Pretty straightforward. If the applicant's here, if they choose to, they can come up to speak.
Thank you, Edward Van Horn, 108 John McCain. I put in a comment also, so I don't need to do that. But yeah, it's just really for equestrian use. The shared lot line there's a little riding ring, rodeo area kind of, and area for horse grazing. So really that's the reason for the movement. I also own Catalina Lone Star, which is the land at 7204. And just to clarify, we did sell that property though on April 24th to April Bell. As part of the contract was to move the property line. So they're aware of that. That's all been in the replat, but just wanted to make sure because of the timelines of this, we submitted in January and the delay, it all kind of got pushed, but she had to close on the lot simply because of timing of the fees and such. So that's why it got pushed, but.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. No cards, no one coming forward. I'm going to close the public hearing. My question, Ben, is we're rezoning the lot of the person he sold it to?
No, in fact, we're rezoning both properties. So
Yeah, we're rezoning both properties, but one of them is no longer the applicant's.
yeah, and we understand that. Where that will come into play is with the plat itself.
Okay.
Before we can file it, all current owners
Yeah,
will have to sign the plat and get that notarized.
Okay.
So there will be a small adjustment as far as who the ownership is on the plat document
Okay.
itself.
yeah.
But that's not
Okay.
that big of a deal.
That's all, I just wanted to check on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any discussion, commissioners? Pretty straightforward.
It's pretty sure.
I'll ask for a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve case ZC 20-003.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, Commissioner Moore, aye. Syed, absent. Holt,
Aye.
Matheson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel is absent. Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Next case.
So this is a companion piece to the previous item. This is the plat in question. We'll just go to the plat document. So this is that shift that I was talking about. So the red dash line is the existing boundary between the two properties, and then the blue line is the new proposed property line. So the lot on the right will get a little bit larger. The lot on the left will get a little bit smaller. But again, both lots, even after this shift, comply with all the minimum standards for the residential estate district. And likewise, we did send our notices out, similar to the zoning, no responses, and staff does recommend approval of this request.
Thank you. Opportunity for the applicant to come back up, good to go, okay? I'm gonna open the public hearing. No cards, no one coming forward. Public hearing's closed. Open commissioners' discussion.
Since it's a different case, just to restate, and already been said, but the new property owner does have to agree to this before it can actually happen.
Yeah.
Right? We know that, but just,
Yeah, this is where on the actual plat document,
Yeah.
we list out the property current owners, and so that will just have to be changed to the new owner now, and there's a place for them to sign, and that gets notarized. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. It just is a small change to the plat document. We'll verify that that's all done correctly before we file it with the county clerk's office.
Okay, we saw this one on a work session, been through it. Okay, I'll request a motion then.
Motion to approve case PC 20-002.
Second,
I'll second.
Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Syed, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0. Next case.
Okay, this is a request to rezone from the agricultural district to our R40 single-family residential district at 218 West Glade Road. Here's an aerial photo of the site. It is undeveloped, although there is an accessory building in the rear of the property. It is an older structure, currently zoned agricultural and designated for residential use in our future land use map. So a couple different pictometry photos of the site. The property itself conforms to most of the R40 district standards. The one exception is the lot width. There is a plat case, which is the following item. They are requesting a waiver to that lot width requirement. So there was a couple options we could have done with this property, but based on history, the adjacent property to the east went through a rezoning and then platting process. At that time, the city council, the request was to go to the R20 district. It would have met all of the dimensional standards. The city council ended up rezoning it to the R40 district with a waiver to the lot width. And so based on that past example, we went this direction, a similar direction. So R40 zoning with a plat waiver for the lot width. But at this time, we're just dealing with the R40 zoning district. And then the next item will deal with the waiver to the lot width. We did send notices out to surrounding property owners. We did not receive any formal response back for this one. Based on that past case and the intent of the council, the R40 will really establish the 40,000 square foot lot size, which we feel is the desire of the council. It does require the lot width waiver, but we feel that this is really the direction that the city council wants it to go. The staff is recommending approval. It does conform to the residential designation in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
With that, I can answer any questions.
I don't really have any. I mean, that, they are very, very deep lots, and I realize it's a unique thing there, but, I can understand the desire to push it to R40 with the waiver.
Right. Yeah, these are very old tracks, and so
Yeah,
not a lot that we can do with the width. There are homes developed on either side of this parcel,
yeah,
so it would be very difficult to get it any wider.
thank you. If the applicant's here and would like to come forward to speak? No? Okay. All right, at that time, I'm gonna open the public hearing. No cards? No one's coming forward? I'm gonna close the public hearing. All right. With that, commissioners' discussion? Concerns? Best option probably for a long and deep lot,
Yeah, it's,
you know,
one of those is what it is.
yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, I'll request a motion then.
I will motion to approve case ZC-20-004.
And a second.
I'll second.
All right, we'll open the vote. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Sad, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Next.
Right, so this is the plat case associated with the rezoning, again, at 218 West Glade Road. We'll just go to the plat exhibit. So the minimum width requirement for the R40 is 150 feet. This lot is approximately 105 feet. So it is substantially more narrow than the minimum. However, it does meet the lot requirements, and they will have to meet all of the other requirements of the district. We did send notices out to surrounding property owners, did not receive any formal response back. Staff is recommending approval of the plat with the plat waiver. I can answer any questions.
What's the plan for this lot?
So they're just setting it up for a single-family home
Okay, so
use.
there's nothing, it's still,
Right. In order to get a building permit, it has to be a duly recorded lot of record. In order to plat it, it has to have an appropriate zoning district. It's too small for an agricultural lot size, and so that's why the rezoning was needed in order to plat. And that basically just sets it up so that when somebody's ready to build on the lot, all that's left is the building
Yeah.
permit process.
did it look like accessory building cross property lines in the?
So the aerial photos and the lines shown on the aerial photos are not survey quality, so they're off quite a bit sometimes. It is close to the property line, but it is not crossing the property line. Now, we hope that they will remove that structure when the next property owner is ready to build, but we don't have any guarantees on that. But it is an older structure. I don't anticipate that they could really do much other than tear it down and replace it.
But if they were to replace it, then it would be subject to the lot width rules as a new.
That's right. So a new accessory building will have to meet all of our accessory building requirements. Yeah. So it may be, a setback versus height situation. They will have to meet all of our requirements.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Where were we at here, just in the commission, just anybody else?
They get a public hearing.
Yeah. We already did the public on this one, no? We get confused
That
with
was
so
the
many of them.
Zoning,
I'll open the public hearing on that. No one's coming forward, no cards, public hearing is closed. We'll open up the commissioners' discussion. And I think we're gonna do three more of these, right? Two more. No discussion here? Looks good to everybody? We will see this again, or no?
No, we won't.
Okay, got it, no problem. It's up to building inspection at that point, permits,
Unless they try to,
yeah,
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 unless they build something that requires a special use permit.
correct. Okay, all right, with that, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to approve case PC 20-003.
I'll second.
All right, we'll open the vote. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Syed, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0. Next.
Right. This is very similar to the item we just heard. This is two properties to the west at 304 West Glade. Very similar situation. This one obviously does have an existing home on the site. The anticipation is that this would be torn down, demolished, and then a new home put back in its place. But that will be for a future date. There's no immediate plans for that. But very similar in size and dimension, and so with the change of zoning, it will allow them to plat. It would still trigger the plat waiver requirement for the lot width. It's 1 foot more narrow than the other property at 104 feet. But otherwise, it meets all of the other requirements for the R40 district. We did send notices out on this property as well and did not receive any responses back one way or the other, and staff is recommending approval of the zoning. And I can answer any questions.
Would the applicant like to come forward and speak? Nope. I'm opening the public hearing. No cards. No one's coming forward. Public hearing is closed. Commissioner discussion? Same as the last one. Okay, I'll request a motion.
I don't have the case number, or I'd make it.
Motion to approve case ZC 20-005.
No, second.
Open the vote. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Syed, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0. Next.
So this is the plat item associated with the rezoning. Again, there will be they are requesting a plat waiver for the minimum lot width. It is 104 feet. Otherwise, it meets all the other dimensional requirements of the district. Yeah, just one more. But again, the same situation as the property 2 doors down. It otherwise meets all the requirements for the R40. And then we feel that this is the desired course of action based on past council decisions. And staff recommends approval with the plat waiver. I can answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, man. Would the applicant like to come forward and speak on this? No one's coming forward. I will open the public hearing. No cards, no one's coming forward. Public hearing is closed. And we'll open the commissioner's discussion. Okay, looks good.
I think this one's a whole foot wider, so.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. All right, I'll request a motion.
Motion to approve case PC 20-004.
Second,
I'll second.
and we'll open the vote. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Syed, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
Okay, I think we're through all those.
Yes.
Next case.
All right, so this one's slightly different. This is a special use permit request for an accessory dwelling at 6009 Westcote Drive. Here's an aerial photo of the site. This is just north of the intersection with LD Lockett. It is currently zoned R40, single-family residential district. It is designated for residential use. Here's a couple better images of the property. So this property did receive a variance to lot coverage back in I think it was 2017. They did grant, the Board of Adjustment did grant an increase to the maximum lot coverage by 5%. The R40 allows a 20% lot coverage. The Board of Adjustments granted up to 25% lot coverage. And what that allowed them to do is build the wing on the back of the property, which is to the right-hand side. So you can kind of see it almost completely wraps around and creates kind of a courtyard there in the middle. But it is considered attached. It meets all of the minimum setback requirements for the district. What they are requesting is to allow for an accessory dwelling in this portion that I highlighted in the yellow. The homeowner has some health issues, and he will require in-home care. And so rather than somebody driving to his property, they have set aside this space that would allow for somebody to be there continually, basically have their own place to stay. And so that does require the special use permit in order to accommodate that. And this is a picture from Google Street View of the house. Really, that addition is to the back of this, so it is not readily visible from the street. So in the R40 district, it does require a special use permit in order to have an accessory dwelling. And the size shall be limited to the most restrictive of the following: either 50% of the primary structure up to the maximum allowed square footage for accessory buildings on the lot, or no more than 1,200 square feet, whichever comes first. And so we do have some data on the site. It's a 20,000 square foot lot, plus or minus. The maximum lot coverage allowed is 5,004 square feet. That includes the additional 5% variance. We did identify the maximum accessory building size, that 4%, because that's one of the thresholds, is getting up to that number. That would be 801 square feet. But you can see the new house is just under 4,000 square feet, and that addition included a garage space as well as this dwelling space. The accessory dwelling space is 534 square feet. And so it does meet all of the minimum requirements for this district, and that includes taking into account the variance that was approved for lot coverage. Here's some plans that were associated with the request, and that it identifies the addition as well as the space set aside for the accessory dwelling. And then we do have a proposed floor plan there as well. And so it has all of the elements for a dwelling. This is just a closer view. And so it will include the kitchen area, restroom, sleeping area, which are the key elements to be considered as a dwelling. We did send our notices out to all properties within 500 feet and did not receive any responses back one way or the other for this item. Staff does recommend approval of the requested special use permit as it meets the standards for accessory dwellings per the Land Development Code. And with that, I can answer any questions.
It's already there, right? Or,
The structure itself is there, but it hasn't been finished out.
but it's attached, it's there.
That's right. It's attached. They have done the shell, I guess is the best way to say that. And in order to finish out this area to include basically all those components to be a dwelling, it requires a special use
And it
permit.
meets all the setback rules.
Yes. As basically in addition to the house, it had to meet the same side yard setback as well as the rear yard setback, and so that was already reviewed and taken into account. It is in compliance with that.
So what makes this an accessory dwelling versus just an add-on to the house?
It's all of those components together. It is the noun definition for dwelling. It basically is its own standalone unit, has its own entrance, ingress, egress. But it has all of the components to be considered a separate dwelling.
So where's the entrance through? So it has its own entrance, is that into the
Yeah,
courtyard there, or is it?
It's through the courtyard, yeah, you can see the door, that access is right there.
Or the garage.
A garage is.
Yeah, is a garage for the dwelling,
But
or
it's
is it?
not connected to the
Yeah,
house?
well, it's all under the same roof and wall system, but there's a wall that separates that single-car garage from this dwelling. The only access into the dwelling is through the door.
Do you gotta walk around the whole building to get to the door?
I don't know that this shows all of the, I guess, ways to get into that courtyard. There may be another way that it's not shown on this plan. They may come in through the front door and head out that way. Well, actually, there, it does show a door to the garage. So I guess it does have access to the garage as well.
So Ben, without this SUP, it could be a game room, a bedroom, it could have a bathroom, it just couldn't have a kitchen?
That's right. And the main component of that is the stove and the oven.
Yes, okay,
But you are correct, it could have all those other things.
okay.
But yeah, they could make it a game room.
It could be, basically, it can be
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
they want, but if it has a stove or an oven, then it's considered a dwelling.
Right.
Yeah, we're just simply looking at approving the ability to dwell, so.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess that's what confuses me. So if you had a home, single-family home with 2 kitchens, then that becomes an accessory dwelling automatically? If you have a separate bedroom and a kitchen and a
It's
different wing of the
these-
house?
That's right, but it really is that stove and oven, that's what is the standard as far as the way to prepare food.
That would be
So-
true for any house that has, like, potentially 2 kitchens in it.
But if you've got like an upstairs game room that has a microwave and a sink,
Yeah,
that's
Maybe.
not a dwelling.
Correct.
It has to have a stove and an oven.
Right, a lot of it is it set up to where somebody can live independently from the rest of the house?
Uh-huh.
So it has access. It can be isolated, so to speak, or separated from the rest of the house.
and there's no, other than the approval for the accessory dwelling, there's no other variances.
Right, it meets all of the other standards as far as size, and as it is still connected to the primary structure, it had to meet all of the required setbacks for a primary structure as well. So yes, there are no other variances or modifications.
Can you go back to the overhead?
Photo.
So it looks like there's already a 2-car go back to the one that had the, kind of the
Oh,
design.
the house plan,
House plan, thank you.
Okay.
right there.
No, there was another
Oh,
one.
one more?
One more.
One more.
There it is. So it already has is it a 2-car garage? with accessibility to the main dwelling.
Yeah, so I believe what they've done with this house is made it accessible or handicap accessible based on the health issues that the owner has.
And I guess my question is, you know, it looks like it's connected already. Is there a wall there, or is there like a pathway between the two garages?
My understanding was that it's walled area, but
So it's just connected, it's attached, but has no shared functionality other than a shared driveway?
yeah, so to speak, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there is the hallway connection between the two garage areas.
Yeah, that's what is that a real hallway, or is it just like?
That's my understanding, yes.
So will
There's
be
a door there that
There's a door
connects
there,
them.
or an opening between the two garages that make it kind of, you know, walk from one to the other without
Right.
having to go outside?
That's my understanding, yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right, thanks, Ben. At this time, would the applicant like to come forward and speak on this case? No one's coming forward, okay. I'm gonna open the public hearing. I have no cards, no one's coming forward. Public hearing is closed. I will open up the commissioners' discussion.
No, just that again, I don't think I have an issue with it as is. And, you know, it's been a while since we've been in here, so I want to just refresh and round what can be done with this property, what can't be done with this addition in the future. If it's you know, a child coming home from college and wants to live in that space, you know, say it was being used for something else, a child coming home from college and wants to live in that space, that's fine. If it's a caregiver, that's fine, but it can never be rented to somebody separately.
Yes, that's absolutely right. We have, it's very explicit. It must be used for family or a servant of the property owner. In this case, it's that latter. It cannot be rented in any way, shape, or form. That's very explicit in our language. We actually, if you might recall, it was a little bit later last year, we actually clarified that even further in our accessory buildings section of Chapter 3. Reiterated the fact that it cannot be rented in any way.
Okay.
Thank you. Everything looks to be in line to me on this still. It meets everything. Intended use is obviously something that falls in our guidelines, and they would not be permitted to rent that property. With that, any further discussion? And if there's not any discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
I motion to approve case ZC 20-006.
And a second?
Second.
We'll open the vote. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Sad, absent. Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matteson, absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel, absent. Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right. The next item is a request for a special use permit for an accessory building to exceed the 4% lot coverage allowance and a reduction in setbacks to property lines. This is at 2313 Hall Johnson. Here's an aerial photo of the site. It is zoned R20, single-family residential district, and it is designated for commercial use.
Hold on one
future
second,
plans.
Ben. Sorry to interrupt you, but Claudia's here,
Oh, okay.
so You want to let her sit in your seat? Thank you.
We'll give her a minute to come in.
Yeah, that way she can see the full presentation. I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Bevel has arrived at the meeting at 8:22. And apologize for the technical difficulties we were having.
Well, I apologize for showing up like this. I had planned to participate from home, so
Thanks for doing that.
Glad you won.
Okay, so I'll start over just a little bit. This is a special use permit request for the allowance, to exceed the 4% lot coverage allowance and a reduction in setbacks to property lines. This is in relation to a detached accessory building at 2313 Hall Johnson Road. I went through the zoning, which is R20, single-family residential district. It is designated for commercial use, however, it is developed with residential use on it. Again, this is for a detached garage to exceed the maximum allowed size for an accessory building, and also for a reduction in setbacks to property lines. Here's some aerial photos and photometry photos of the site. The photometry photo actually does not show the building. This was recently constructed. However, the aerial photo on the left side does show the new building. They're oriented opposite of each other, but it is that the building there at the middle of the picture on the left. Next one. And so that building does exceed the maximum size allowed for accessory buildings. For historic purposes, the building first was permitted as a primary structure. There is an existing house on the front of the property, and that was going to be considered the accessory building. And so in the review of the building, we did verify that it met all the minimum setback requirements for the R20 district, which it does as a primary structure. What they were going to do with the existing house is remove the stove and the oven. That would, at the time, would have eliminated the classification as a dwelling because it did not have a full kitchen. During the construction of the garage, it is intended primarily to be a garage. The definition for dwelling was expanded to include the active dwelling, so not just as a noun does it have all the components to be a dwelling, but also if there is the active dwelling in an accessory building, it is considered an accessory dwelling as well. And so the original item, which you had heard several months ago, was to allow for the size as well as an accessory dwelling for the front building. It did not receive a recommendation for approval from the commission. There was a recommendation to approve. The motion was to approve, but did not receive the 4 requisite votes to be considered as a recommendation for approval. It was planning to go to the city council. However, there were some conversations that led to the applicant withdrawing that case and then making these changes and bringing it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so in this case, the house in front is considered the primary residence. And so this being an accessory building, it exceeds the size. And also as an accessory building, the setbacks are calculated based on the overall height of the accessory building, and it does not meet those setback requirements. So that's the language basically that justifies all of that. The last paragraph is, any request for a building permit for an accessory building which does not meet the criteria shall only be authorized after approval of a special use permit. And so thus we are going through the process for that. Here's the data for the site. So the property itself is 41,818 square feet. The maximum lot coverage for the district is 25%, which is about 10,500 square feet. The maximum accessory building size allowed at 4% would be 1,672 square feet. The existing house is 820 square feet, and then the building, the new garage is 4,000, just over 4,000 square feet. That's 9.6%, so it is more than double the authorized approval that staff can approve. But together with the house, the total lot coverage is 11.6%, so well under the maximum allowed for the district. Here is the site exhibit. So this is pushed to the rear of the property with a 10-foot setback on the western boundary and then a 14.3-foot setback on the eastern boundary. The building itself has 20-foot walls, and at the top of the ridge, it's 25 feet in height. Based on the way we calculate the setback, based on that height, it would require a 22-foot setback. And so it clearly does not meet those required setbacks. However, as a primary structure, it would meet the minimum district requirements. The R20 district has a 10-foot setback requirement for primary structures.
And what is the setback in the back?
It's 10 feet on the western boundary and 14.3 feet off the eastern boundary.
And how about the back boundary?
Oh, the requirement is 25 feet, and I don't remember what the setback is, but even at the 25 feet, there's a 22-foot requirement, and so it's 3 feet beyond that. So there is no issue with the rear setback.
Okay.
And in fact, it's actually calculated a little differently because the slope goes towards the back, and so they get a little bit of allowance for that too. But there is no issue with the rear setback. All right, I think we have some pictures to show you, photographs. So that is the house in front. These are a little bit older. We took them back in the late winter. And then this looks to the back, so this is looking from north to south. That is the new garage. And then specifically the photo on the left, that's the view from Amador, which is the street to the east. There is one property that separates the subject property from that street. And then the applicant, as part of this modified request, they are proposing to install Italian cypress trees to increase the screening. You can also see the fence that was recently installed as well. We did permit that fence. And then along the eastern side, where the visibility off of Amador, they are also proposing the cypress trees as well, which would help block the view of that building. So staff does recommend approval. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. We did send our notices out to surrounding property owners. At the time I put this slide together this afternoon, we had 11 responses back, all in favor. However, late this afternoon, not too long before the meeting, we received 2 more, both in favor. Everything that we received has been provided for you at your station. But again, so 13 total responses, all in favor, none in opposition.
Can I see that slide one more time?
Yeah. So you can see only 5 dots were identified on the map. Those are the only ones that were within the map area. The others were elsewhere within the city, but they don't show up on this map exhibit. Staff does recommend approval contingent on screening of the accessory building from adjacent properties. The applicant has provided those 2 exhibits from the Hall Johnson view as well as the Amador view. We feel that that does a good job to help block that building. And that would allow for the 10-foot setback on the western side, 14.3-foot setback on the eastern side at the 4,033 square foot size. No dwelling is being proposed, either the noun or the verb, with this garage area. And hopefully that made sense, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
No questions from me?
Has the kitchen, I know before when we heard this case, there was a kitchen and a bathroom in the garage. Is that still the case?
So the kitchen will have to be modified. It cannot have the stove and the oven. We actually don't have any prohibition of having a restroom in garages. We actually see them quite often. So that element, as far as the stove and the oven, will have to be removed. Otherwise, there is no authorization for anybody to dwell in this building.
Thank you.
And they are not requesting that either.
And just to clarify, when this was built, it was approved.
Right. It was approved as a primary structure under the way I was interpreting the code. That was broadened while it was under construction, which necessitated the special use permit previously. The primary issue was to still allow for the tenant to remain in the house up front. And so we feel that this would be a suitable way to accommodate that, bearing in mind the changes that occurred while this was under construction.
So the approval was as a primary structure, not as a garage
Right.
originally? Okay.
And then, again, with that, what was to happen with the house in the front?
Yeah, the house up front was to be modified to remove the stove and the oven. So at the time, I was just looking at the definition, does it qualify as a dwelling in the noun sense? So does it have all of those components to be a dwelling? And without the stove and the oven, it is missing that component, so it was,
But
Not
they
being
were
a dwelling.
proposing to move, because I don't remember that part.
no,
They were not.
they would remain in there without a stove in the oven.
The people who live in the house, the tenants live in the house, were going to remain in that house without a stove and an oven.
Right.
So it's a dwelling if they live there, right?
Today, yes. And so that was previous, so now we understand that, and the intent is that is considered the primary dwelling, so there will be no modification to that, which makes this, which was previously deemed the primary structure, is now an accessory building, accessory structure, and therefore it's oversized and it does not meet the setbacks.
So is it permissible then to dwell in an accessory building as opposed to an accessory dwelling? If they
No.
continue to live there?
Not anymore, and that was clarified in our land development code late last year. That specifically came through to make that explicitly clear. And we also modified the language to say that no accessory buildings can be forward of a primary structure, which we did not have that regulation before. And so today, before a permit could be issued, they would have to go through a special use permit process for something similar to this. Whereas previous to those additions, those modifications, there was no requirement that an accessory building had to be behind a primary structure.
But they would have been permitted to live in that front house without a kitchen previously?
Yes, previously,
Wow.
yes.
Okay.
Which that has been modified and that is no longer authorized either.
So the way it is today, it would not have been approved today, but at the time, it was. And
That's
it's
right.
all about the dwelling, the stove and the oven.
Yes.
And it had nothing to do with the fact that it's basically a garage.
Well,
In other words, can you build a 6,000-foot garage and put a little kitchen in it and it's a dwelling?
it has to have the place to sleep, place to go to the restroom, and a place to prepare food. And that is the stove and the oven. All of those together identify a dwelling in the noun sense. As long as all of those components are in a structure, it can be considered a dwelling as a primary structure.
We are seeing this case in this manner because of how we changed our view.
Right.
And if it happened again, and the gentleman brought that in, they would immediately look at him and go, you need an SUP to build that. We can't stamp that. But back then, prior to us changing the way we viewed it, it made sense, so they just added a room to it. They didn't want a room in it, from what I heard last time. They can correct me if I'm wrong. They added the room to make it a dwelling. The main dwelling, they moved the front home to the accessory dwelling. And by the time this whole deal got done, we had flipped, and that option was no longer on the table for them. So, thus, we're looking at it like this, but moving forward, I can imagine if it was the same case, we wouldn't be looking at it in this light. We'd be looking at it from, do we approve the plans for them to build it or not? Or approve the SUP for an oversized garage, et cetera, et cetera. So we find ourselves tonight in a unique spot, and the building's there. And that's kind of the background I understand it to be.
Yeah.
So with that, you know,
Right, I just wanted to be clear that the
Yeah.
building is there because it was approved by the city.
yes.
That's right.
Okay.
However, at that time, it wouldn't have been required to have an SUP, so it never came to planning and zoning or to the council. It was approved through the building inspection process.
That is correct.
Thank you. So no one approved it in accordance with our ordinances beyond the building inspection department. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Community Development Department, which includes building inspection.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Planning and development,
Community
community development.
Development, yeah.
Thank you.
So most things we look at haven't been built yet, you know, or they're modifying it. This is a little bit of a unique case, but
I would say, again, this may not be the right time. I was going to save this comment for after the applicant speaking, but just to clarify, most cases we do see are before buildings are built. I do believe that if somebody builds something that is against code without knowledge, then, you know, that's too bad. I mean, for me, that's, you know, that's, ignorance is not an excuse. In this case, though, this is one of those things that really, there always is certain cases that make me uneasy, and this is one of them, because it is a situation where I do believe it was a loophole. It was probably something that was confusing in the way the code was written at the time, and because of the way things were written, they were allowed to do certain things that today we would not allow. So if this was a situation today where they were wanting this accessory building built, I would vote no. But it's like, what's the lesser of two evils? I mean, you put them in a situation, we put that property in a situation where if we don't approve it, then what happens? Then you have an empty accessory building, that was a house sitting in front of the garage that nobody can use, and it just sits there empty. I mean, there's just no, to me, no good outcome that would be, you know, I mean, there's maybe one that's better than another, but neither one is a really good outcome in my estimation. But, you know, I think in a way it's worse, Again, I want to think about that a little more, but I think it probably is, it may be worse not to approve, because then what happens? Then you still have, either you gotta make them tear the thing down, or the accessory building, or it stays there, but then no one can live in the house in the front, right? I mean, and then it becomes just an empty building.
Yeah, if it does not get approved, then a decision will have to be made by the property owner as which one to occupy and to use. So the house as a residential unit or the garage. So if you occupy one, you cannot occupy the other.
But if they're occupied, yes, what we're going to now is they're gonna occupy the house in front.
Somebody is occupying the house in front.
Yeah, so if this gets denied, right, then somebody will still occupy the house in front,
But if they occupy the house in front, then they cannot occupy the garage.
but they're not occupying the garage.
But they want to occupy the garage. Not as a dwelling, but as a garage. So use might be a better term.
So, okay, so they would still sit there and they're just gonna use it?
Yes.
See, that's what, okay.
Okay,
So
okay.
we're really debating on where they can dwell. The buildings will stay. We're just talking about,
Dwell and use.
Yeah, so if it does not get approved, the house can continue to be used as a house, but that means no use of the garage. Or the tenants have to leave the house and nobody uses the house, and then the garage can be used.
So in either case, say it gets denied, one building basically gets locked up,
Right.
but it's still there.
But they could have had the house and an accessory building, but that big thing there doesn't meet, it exceeds what an accessory building the accessory building requirements.
Yeah, so the way the SUP works is staff is authorized to approve anything up to the 4% number. Anything over that 4% has to go through the special use permit
And
process.
this is more than double that.
Right, and so, but each one is a case-by-case situation. Is it appropriate for the property? It's not that it's in violation to the size, it's just that anything over the 4% has to have special approval through this special use permit process. And that's where the decision as far as what is the appropriate size is up
So
to
if they
you guys
modified
and
the
city.
size of that building to comply with an accessory building as opposed to an accessory dwelling, it could stay.
Without a special use permit approval, yes.
Okay,
It would
so-
reduce
so the
down to
building
that
could be
1,600 square
modified.
foot size.
Okay,
Or to, yeah, that's without any approval.
right, as long as it's within the specifications of our ordinance.
Right, now again, it's not to say that it's not appropriate for any structure to exceed the 4%. It's just that when you exceed the 4%, it has to go through an approval process
Okay.
through the council,
Okay.
first through the planning zone.
So they could have an accessory building and live in the house if the accessory building met our requirements.
Yes.
Okay,
Or
without
Or
an
receive a
SUP.
special use permit.
Okay, thank you.
But we can't make them make those changes to the accessory building. We
Right.
can't do that.
They would have to make that decision if they truly want a garage and they don't receive approval of a special use permit. The only way would be to reduce that to that 4% number.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And at this time, we'll ask the applicant to come forward and if they would like to speak on the case.
Thank you for seeing me tonight. I realize that this is the first time back since, I guess, post-COVID, and this is kind of a big deal, so I really appreciate everyone coming out tonight and support of our community and what's happening in Colleyville and across the country. So thank you for taking your time tonight to do that, and all the citizens that are here. My name is Randy Primrose. I live at 5506 Sycamore Drive, Colleyville, Texas, one street over from this structure. I want to say that you guys have heard this case. We've tried to modify it to the best of our ability to achieve what we believe we heard from multiple meetings with city officials, yourselves, and others involved in the process. Just a quick recap, we finished this building last September. We were notified in roughly August that we no longer complied with the building permit that we applied for almost a year before that, and was made aware of that literally when I was wrapping up the final inspection of the building. So we have sat vacant with this building that we did per code, per everything that was approved, per full disclosure, working with the city through this process to obtain the building permit. So nothing was done in conceit or hidden in any kind of mal way whatsoever. So, and I'm happy to have you ask any of the staff as well. We always intended to keep our tenant in the building. We made them aware when we started the process that we would have to remove their oven and stove as part of it if they wanted to remain there as an accessory building, which was allowed at the time and approved that way. And they said, absolutely, we love Colleyville, we love being here. We have a young boy that goes to OC Taylor, and we do not want to have to relocate or get displaced. And so we said, okay, well, you've been great tenants, you've kept up the property. We would much rather have you here than displace you somewhere else. We are one of the, if not the least expensive property in Colleyville to allow someone to go to the school system that we have a great school system here, so it's highly desirable. So they wanted to remain, and they understood that was going to be the case. So with that, we went through this full process, had full approval, and here we are today. I am a developer. I build a lot of things across the country. Typically, when something like this happens, when you get caught midstream of a code change or an ordinance change, generally, in most municipalities I've worked in, it becomes a grandfathered issue at that point because we couldn't do anything about it, and the change was effected after the fact, after we had already made the investment. So generally, that's how I've seen this get handled. I realize we're at your mercy, and I respect that greatly. So please know that in making your decision. So we were told we needed the SUP. A family that lived there for over 3 years really wanted to stay. So we've done everything in our power to make that happen. We do not want to displace them, especially since the pandemic occurred. I know that this has drug out for a long time as we've worked through this. And they have recently had another child and had some difficulties with work. So I don't know that there's a lot of alternatives right now with what's happening in regards to having them move to begin with. So with that said, there were really 3 prevalent takeaways from previous meetings with yourselves as well as other staff and members of council. One was a multi-tenancy issue. I believe that we are resolving that by making an accessory building only, so we cannot dwell in it overnight. We do not plan to dwell in it overnight. We do not plan on occupying it in any kind of long-term situation overnight or having anyone rent it. And I'm happy to sign an affidavit. It will not be rented. We will have valuables in there that I really don't want anyone else in there for. So 2, we heard that there were people of the opinion that didn't like the appearance. So we really tried to put up a screen of trees that grow to the appropriate height. We've set it all the way back to the back of the property to really screen it as best as possible, as well as put up a fence all the way around the perimeter and, in my opinion, really improve this property from what it was when we took it over. And so we're trying to provide screening to accommodate that. 3, didn't want to set a precedent. I believe that it's no longer possible to set a precedent of this type situation, given the code has changed, as well as we are doing an accessory building, not an accessory dwelling. So we will not occupy it. We will not have the ability to have 2 occupancies of that nature at the same time, which I believe is really an important thing in this situation. So I want to go on record. We will not have any overnight occupancies in that building in the rear. With that said, I believe there are a few last time in opposition, and they said some similar things of what their concerns were. I have received 13 letters of support from immediate neighbors as well as surrounding neighbors that don't show up there because they're outside of the zone or the radius, which in my business is an overwhelming thing to have 13 letters to be provided of that. So with that said, I really lastly want to say we did everything per the permit of what we were expected to do as part of this situation, and I really ask for your support tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant while he's up here?
Just the Italian cypress trees, is there a certain height that you're looking at from the get-go, or are these, I don't know much about those trees, how do they?
So the reason I selected those is they're really fast growers. They grow really tall, for, I don't know, 20 to 30 feet tall. And I can line them together, and it'll probably be, in my opinion, the quickest way for me to get you a screen of that size and nature. Otherwise, really large caliper trees will grow into each other and create longer-term issues. And so this was really a species that accommodated that in the quickest way of their growth patterns, and they don't spread out and grow into each other and create other longer-term problems.
I have a question. So when you purchased this property, what was the ultimate goal? Was it do you use this as a huge garage? And then you were gonna lease the house? Did you want to lease part of the garage and the house? Like what were you trying to do when you bought this property?
My father-in-law and I bought it. We each have a hobby of antique cars. And so it is to store our cars in there and enjoy the space that we've created in there. We actually think it's really nice, and the inside is fantastic, in my opinion. The front house was really, we had a great tenant and a great member of the community that we wanted to accommodate as best as possible. That's really the whole intent.
So it was to lease the front house and then have this huge garage where you put your antique cars?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the goal, okay.
So this may be a question for Ben or for you, I don't know yet, maybe Ben, if you think that you're more the person to answer this. So looking forward, tenants decide to leave, then what? What's, you know, that, is somebody required then to live on this since it's a residential property, or can they still, again, it might be a better question for him, you still operate the garage as a storage facility more or less without anybody living on the property for a length of time?
I would be happy to, but they're probably looking for your opinion.
Yeah, so as the property owner, he wouldn't necessarily be required to rent out the house in the front.
But could,
Would you even have to keep it?
That's
Could
what-
it just
that's-
end
yeah.
up being basically a big storage unit on a lot?
Well, so this was permitted as a primary structure, and so it can be considered a primary structure if that front house is removed, and it would be in complete compliance.
okay. That's, if you want to comment on it, you're more than welcome to.
I guess is the question, what do I plan on doing?
Right.
I plan on, for the foreseeable future, letting this fine couple live there.
But if they move?
Once they decide to move, it's probably in all of our best interest for me to continue to rent it unless we tear it down and then, I guess, let a larger house go in front of this one, which would eventually, that is what's going to happen. A larger house will be built in front of this garage, and you'll never see the garage. Ultimately, that's what will happen with this lot.
Do you
Would-
plan to build a house?
Pardon me?
Do you plan to build a big house?
Not in the foreseeable future.
Would it become a problem to build a big house in front of this big garage as far as lot coverage? Could you even do that?
Can you go back to that slide? There still is room to build a house in the front. I think we were at 11.6%. Yeah, so Uh,
Like what
it'd be
size house
Just under
could?
4,000 square feet
Mhm.
is what would still be available and still comply with lot coverage.
Anybody else have any questions for him? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It'd be more than 4,000 square feet because I forgot it was R20, which allows 25% lot coverage.
Mhm.
So they still have a little over 13% lot coverage left. So that might be more like 5,500 square feet.
Okay. All right, with that said, I'm gonna open the public hearing. I do have cards. Public hearing is open. Randy Primrose already spoke, correct? All right, so we're good there. Gary Reeder, wishes to speak in support. And for everyone tonight, as you address the microphone, please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, I'm Gary Reeder. I live at 4603 Meandering Way in Colleyville, Texas. As my son-in-law has explained to y'all, we have got into this process and done everything according to what we thought was according to code from the time from start to finish. Now, in the middle of this, it's all, stopped. But right now, it appears that we're caught up. There's a lot of, it could be in this, I don't want to use the term bureaucracy, but in be able to, we have a couple, and the couple's here in the room that lives in that house. And if the decision is for us, if we do not have a yes decision for this, then we are and have to be forced then to evict a couple in the middle of this pandemic that is going on. And with that, I know what y'all thinking is that was our decision on the start, but it was not our decision on the start. That changed months into after the construction started. So what do we do now with a young couple that's going to have to move as a result of a no vote? And I'm just trying to deal with what is the humane thing to do? What is the right thing to do in this? Because nothing's going to be accomplished, so we have no hope. If we are able to occupy our car barn, so to speak, and we're having to evict some people, I don't feel good about that. That's not the way I like to do things. And so, but that is only alternative we will have if the council doesn't vote an affirmative for this. So I just wanted to explain that it's not just about us, it's about other people that were affected. And we're not concerned about rentals and all this thing, we're concerned about what is the good for them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Phelan wishes to speak in opposition.
Hello, my name is Andrew Phelan. I live at 2307 Ballantrae Drive, the property directly across Hall Johnson. My family has occupied that property for more than 25 years now, and you can imagine my surprise when my wife and I came home from work and what looks like an auto body shop is built behind our house. It's my understanding that several of us neighbors called the city about the size, height, and construction materials used on the property. And we're told that nothing could be done about it because it was permitted as a home, not as a garage. During the last meeting, it was brought up that when they first attempted to permit this, they were told that the building could not be built of that size as a garage. And their way to work around it was to say, okay, well, that's my house. And I'm going to put a couple things in there in a small, tiny room and say that that's my house. and I'm going to build it extremely close to the property lines of the neighbors, and I'm going to build it more than 2 times the size footprint of what's allowed, and about double the height of what's allowed for a garage. The owner acts like he's somehow the victim here, and that the city's not letting him do what was agreed. But if you guys vote no, and there's no special use permit, it's my understanding he can do what was originally agreed with the city, which was, and the tenant, which was remove the stove. They still occupy the structure. Tenant's not evicted. But what's happening here is the city and the citizens were deceived, and we're now getting strong-armed into allowing exactly what the city and the land development code says cannot be done, which is build a building of this size. Let's see. In addition to the rules that will be allowed to be broken, if this special use permit is allowed, I believe that those alone are wrong, but in addition to that, it should be denied for several reasons. One, it's mentioned, well, this won't set a precedent. Well, it won't set a precedent for if there's already a house on the property and I go build an even bigger building. But there's nothing that says that somebody can't go build a monster garage at the back of an undeveloped property, say that it's their house, and then come back here under special use permit and say, oh, this building's extremely awkward. It's not a house, it's actually a garage. And then get approval to build another house in front of it. So I think that the ability for that precedent still exists, even with the changes that you guys have made. And I believe it's clear that the owner attempted to deceive the city and the citizens by permitting it as a home instead of a garage, when it clearly is not. Permitting it in this way prevented citizens from having their concerns looked at during the construction process. They were immediately dismissed, saying that it's a home, and they were not looked into. And during the last meeting, the owner said it clearly was never a home. He never intended it for it to be a home. In my mind, it's deceitful to say that it was a home. And on top of that, the property is single-family zoning. Regardless of whether somebody lives there or not, it's going to be occupied by 2 tenants, one the owner using the back garage and a renter using the front house. This will double the traffic in and out of the property, something that's not typical for single-family homes. It breaks the intent for the clearly it's named single-family. I have a detached garage at my house. It was built back in 1994, permitted with the city of Colleyville. It's still used as a garage to this day. And I don't expect that my family can live in the house up front and then I could rent the garage to a tenant in the back, or vice versa. I do believe that this is an extremely strange situation. It's not a good position for any of us to be in. But I do feel like that there are ways out of this, and I don't think that the way out of it is to just simply say, we will allow it, even though what we're allowing, the owner was told could not be done day one. In my mind, you hold the owner to the original agreement with the city, which was remove the stove from the small house, this 800 square foot house that it clearly doesn't align with the rest of the properties in the area. Let the tenant stay. And at some point, I'm assuming a home without a stove is unlikely to be one that is desired to be lived in. If that particular house goes vacant, I think what is likely to happen is the income from that will no longer be covering property taxes, which would be incentive for it to be an owner-occupied property. And it'd be incentive for an owner to actually build a home that meets consistent sizes with homes in the area and meets a consistent size with the building that he has built in the back. I think we all know that it's absurd having a small 800 square foot house in a more than 4,000 square foot building behind it for our area. It's something you'd more likely see in the county than in the city. And I don't think that this is,
Hold on a second.
am I okay?
Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
We don't have, because we don't have the setup, so we're timing it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that. Monica Medina wishes to speak in support.
Good evening. I wrote a little something here since I'm not a very good public speaker, so I just wanted to share my thoughts on here. I currently reside in the home with my family. My name's Monica Medina. I currently live at 2313 Hall Johnson Road, along with my husband Adrian and our 7-year-old son Fabian and our 4-month-old daughter Elena Rose. We've since occupied this little beauty of a home since July of 2017. It was the summer before my son started kindergarten, and I had come across this house immediately. I fell in love with it. The city of Colleyville plus the school district was everything we could ask for and more. O.C. Taylor Elementary is an amazing school, and we are so thankful for all the wonderful teachers and staff. My son absolutely loves his teachers and all his friends he's made in the past few years. Since Mr. Primrose took over ownership, we have since seen so much improvement with the exterior of the property, and it's been beautified tremendously. Family members who come over can't even believe it's the same home. We truly feel blessed. We have built many memories in this home that we cherish. Pray we continue to raise our family here to make new ones. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I have lost my job and have been put on furlough until further notice. My husband's business has also been affected. It would truly be a hardship to uproot and relocate our family, and the cost would be too great to confront. I know Mr. Primrose has heard me say time and time again, we love being here and we want to stay. We love the school district, our son. We love the school district for our son, and on behalf of my son, my husband, and myself, my family, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bradley and Christy Hildeth wish to speak in opposition. Oh, you're the other one? Okay, sorry about that. Let's see here. Do I have any other cards for this case? Anybody else out there wishing to speak? But no other cards?
Yes, there's.
Which one are we? Is this H?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. John J. wishes to speak in opposition.
My name is John Jay. I live at 2309 Hall Johnson, which is to the west side of this property. This has been a long and crazy thing. When I first got the notice in the mail, I thought a 4,000 square foot building, I thought, great, somebody's gonna build a house. I think that's the normal inclination of anybody would think when you see something that size on paper. As it reiterated earlier, when it started going up, just a steel structure, I called up to the city, please come out and look and check it. We can't, it's a house, it's done and it's a done deal. So now we're stuck with this situation. I think if anybody goes out there to look, I don't think anybody would want, this is a 1 acre lot or just under, you can't say that you can put a 4,000 square foot steel structure on a 1 acre lot. It just doesn't look right. It looks horrible. And this is a classic bait and switch. Again, it was built as a house. We're gonna take the stove out of the front, and now they're coming back again to switch around to get a special use permit to allow for their, whatever it is they want to do with the property. It sets a bad precedent. It's some kind of a loophole. The city's been in cahoots the whole way with this, which makes it look even worse. And my biggest opposition is that this is basically like carpetbagging. This person has no interest in this property. He doesn't live there. He rents it out. He has no interest in improving the property. And he just owns a metal building that can go on anywhere else in the city at any time as well. There's no way you can say that you can't do it. And so I don't understand how that can be approved over all that's gone on so far. And it's not the idea of the city.
you're losing tax revenue because that's not a house that should be, it should be a nicer, could be a nicer house there. And also just the aesthetics of the neighborhood that would be improved when you build a regular house. Randy's going to my house and told me he wants to build a house there. And that was one of the original things when he came over. If that's changed again, I wouldn't be surprised because everything else seems to change. But I think one way out of this is saying a condition. You make conditions all the time with people about how they improve their properties and things like the cemetery. I think, fine, we'll prove it, but within a year, you need to start construction on a nice home. I think that's a reasonable compromise, a reasonable way out, and everybody, it's a win-win.
Thank you. John Arita wishes to speak in support.
Hey, my name's John Arita. I live at 2401 Poplar Court East in Arbor Estates, just behind this property. So I get the pleasure of going down Hall Johnson daily and seeing it from one angle and turning it on Amador and seeing the barn from the other angle. And, to me, nothing has happened since Randy bought it except improvement. I mean, I've driven down Hall Johnson for the last 30 years since I was a kid. It's probably been a dirt, gravel road up to a small house for that long, and he's since, improved it with a concrete drive and put a fence. And I don't feel deceived like I guess some of my neighbors do. I mean, I think his intent has always been to appease what the code and permit was asking him to do, as well as put a structure there that he could house his cars and allow a tenant to reside there as long as they're wanting to. I have kids that have gone to O.C. Taylor, love it as well, and understand their desire to keep a tenant there as long as they want. And, I would hate, we moved to the house there on Amador probably 4 years ago for the schools. And so I can see how upsetting it'd be to have somebody displaced because of being kind of caught in the middle of change in policy. So, I also don't think it sets a precedent per se, because as you guys covered very well, on a go-forward basis, this probably wouldn't happen, but it's a special circumstance where it was approved initially. And so I have no reason to think it'll become any more dilapidated or an eyesore to the community. I think it looks fine as it is, and the cypresses will only improve that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brandon Walt wishes to speak in support.
My name's Brandon Awalt. I live at 107 Williamsburg Court here in Colleyville. I actually grew up here in Colleyville, from all the way from elementary school, where I went to O.C. Taylor as well. Graduated from Grapevine High School. We moved away and haven't been back until about a year ago. We intentionally moved back to Colleyville because of what Colleyville is and because of the school districts and everything that it is. The property, I drive past it every single day that's in question and see no issues with the way that it looks, the appearance. I think it actually looks a lot better than it did beforehand. And to think about the fact that a family could possibly be displaced because of not approving this when it was already approved previously just really upsets, the heart of what Colleyville is and the people who move here for so much of the reason of what Colleyville is. So I'm in full support of it, and I just hope that we can keep the tenants in there. I have no doubt that Mr. Primrose will keep that property looking great and take care of it, and those cypress trees will block it from any other views that are not pleasurable. So, thank you.
Thank you. No more cards. No one else coming forward. At this time, I'll invite the applicant to address any of the opposition he would like to.
I want to say that conversations that were had with the city were not privileged to anyone else. So there was a lot of things said that supposedly I said or did that are really inaccurate, and there's no basis for them whatsoever. I think it's pretty clear to me what's been laid out here. I think the things that have been said don't really have a bearing of what reality or the truth of the situation is. As Ben fully is aware of what happened during this process, really Ben is one of the only ones that was aware. None of my neighbors over there were aware of any conversations or dealings with the city. So in light of all that, I pray that you guys would make the right decision in this case, given I truly believe we've done everything the city has asked us to do, with the exception of some changes in policy midway through this that required me to come here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The public hearing is now closed. So we're going to open this up for commissioner discussion at this point. I do believe that tonight we are simply looking at the special use permit for the accessory building to exceed the 4% lot coverage. And also a reduction in setbacks to the property line. So I'm not sure about really having a lot of discussion about the house. I mean, if we need to, we need to, but I'm not sure we can make adjustments to the existing house with this case because we're simply looking at the garage. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ben.
That's correct.
Would it even be possible to put some sort of stipulation on the approval of this that connected it to how long that house could stay there or it could stay occupied?
I mean, it is a special use permit where conditions can be made.
Yeah.
I would just say as long as it does have a connection as far as compatibility with the site, then that would be appropriate.
Okay. Just wanted to get that on the table, so we understood that. We've seen a lot about this case. So what are our thoughts on it?
Go ahead, Matt.
This is it's a really kind of a difficult thought process for me, because, and I wanted to say this as well, I'm sure you all understand this, in any role like this, you have to separate, what's really best for the city, what the zoning rules are, what they were. I do agree that this is you can make a strong argument that there's a grandfathered consideration here because things did change after. What I'm getting at is, I definitely feel for the couple. That's not part of my decision-making process because I can't allow that to be. If I let my heartstrings get tugged every time something like this happened, then it'd be really hard to make a logical decision. Having said that, to me, it's not so much about, and again, this sounds harsh, I don't mean it to, about displacing a family. I don't want to displace any family, but as far as the zoning rule or that I'm making, that's got to try to separate that because for the reasons I just said. So for me, it becomes, okay, we and the city council says no, then what? What's the lesser of two evils? What does that become? And for me, that potentially becomes worse. If we deny this, then what? You can't, unless I'm wrong, you can't make the occupants do anything with the property other than you can't do anything with one of your buildings. And if there, that to me is the only real option we have, or not the option, that's the outcome if we say no. It kind of speaks to the importance of having strong zoning, rules in place, and because I don't think the Primroses deceived anybody. I think that they, saw the zoning rules and were able to work within the zoning laws that we have to do what they wanted to do with the property. But I don't think it was deceitful in that they were doing something that they didn't fully believe was legal within what the city allowed at the time, and then things changed. So I have a really hard time with this one, because again, if this were to come in front of us today, with the rules in place, the zoning in place that we have today, with no accessory building in front of your main dwelling, other things, there's no way I would approve this. But I think I'm inclined to approve it, but I also say to the city council to really think this one through, because it is a very unique situation based on when the approvals happen, what's happened since then, what becomes of the property if it gets denied. Be careful what you ask for sometimes. It may end up, in my mind, be a worse situation unless somebody else on the board here thinks otherwise, or can think of a better solution that we could put in place. The only thing I would ask is, that those cypress trees be a certain, and I don't know what would be appropriate and how fast they grow, but I would ask them to be a certain size in the beginning, so that they achieve the intended purpose sooner than later. If it takes 10 years to grow to get to the purpose you're trying to do, then that doesn't necessarily work for me. I'm babbling here a little bit because it is such a confusing case in many ways, but I am inclined to approve it unless someone says if it's denied, this outcome ends up being better, and I don't see one that we can guarantee would be. So.
Well, what are the options? What are the options? Let's say it gets denied. Can the house stay and the tenants stay, and then modifications have to be made to the garage, or it just can't be used? Like, let's lay all the options on the table. If it's no, if it gets denied.
So if it is no, there are two options. One is the family stays in the house up front, and then no use of the garage in the back
Okay,
at all.
okay,
And then the other option would be to use the garage, but that means the family in the front would have to be relocated, and then no use of the house in front.
I'm sorry.
could modifications be made to the garage?
No.
That's not an option?
Not while there is occupancy of the house in the front.
Why is that?
Well, they need the special use permit to allow for the oversize and the setbacks. So if that is not approved, then there is no way to final that permit. And so it's unusable without that final inspection, certificate of occupancy. Unless, well, I suppose there is an option of reducing the size down to the 4%. So I guess that would be the option.
Right. So those are the three options.
Well, we can't make them do anything to either building other than not use one.
No, but I'm just saying, if the ultimate goal is to keep this family in this house, there are ways to do that, but that's gonna mean a sacrifice on the property owner's part.
Here's what I would like to say. I'm like Matt. If this was just about the Medinas, it would be, absolutely yes for me. But that is not our job. Our job is to try to fulfill as closely as possible the requirements of our ordinances. And I certainly commend Mr. Primrose. He did a great job rallying his troops and getting all these letters for people who believe that it's a good idea to go ahead as is. Only, I believe, 4 of those were within the zoning parameter required. the 20, is it 20% now or is it 30%? 20%. Okay, so I also do not believe that Mr. Primrose was sneaking around trying to figure out how to skirt the law. But I do believe that he called it a house when he knew it was a garage. He has said that. So I'm not a big fan of variances anyway, but if we approve an SUP and we have these setbacks that are egregious and we have double the size of the building as required according to our, and that was already in place. The size of that building, was that not already in place, the 4,000, for a accessory building? Was it already 4,000 feet, so he called it a home, so he could make it 8,000 feet?
No, the total size is 4,000 square feet, 4,033. The 4% was in place at the time, that is correct. However, in this case, it was not an accessory building, and so it did not have to comply with that 4%.
Thank you, okay. But it was, in my mind, an accessory building because the intention was always to store vehicles in it. That was the intention.
Yes, that was.
So for me, I feel like, I feel bad for Mr. Primrose and his father. I think it's awesome that they have a hobby that they enjoy together, but I can't, I just can't approve something that is so beyond what would otherwise be reasonable, and know that it's going to be there and it's going to be like that, and knowing that someone else might use it as an opportunity to do something similar. We don't, it is a residence, it's zoned as a residence. And I can't agree to approve it. That's, I will be a no vote.
I would differ in that, because just my views is the city didn't handle this very well. They knew it was a garage when they approved the plans. They, from what I hear, told the owner to make it a residence so that they could approve it, which is disappointing, because they did that for a reason. And the only people that lose in this are the people sitting over here to our left that spoke earlier. If we are a no vote, because they're not tearing their garage down. It's already been permitted by the city as a house garage or whatever the city just thought they were going to call it from the get-go, which I hope never happens again, because, you know, this is not the way we ought to look at cases going forward. But we're sitting here today with this one, and I've got a kid in elementary school, and that's just my opinion, is that they're the ones that lose. The garage is going to stay, you know?
Well, I know we disagree, but I do want to say, this is a great couple, and you can see that they are and that they love their family. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine wherever they go. Yes, we all have hard times, but they have wonderful children, and they're young, and I believe that they can survive whatever happens.
But also to me, you know, we say that kind of a middle ground here. If we do say no, and they have to be evicted from the house is still going to be there.
They don't have to tear it down?
They don't have to tear it down.
No.
So it's still there. Now it's just an empty building so that goes back to my argument is like, well then, what's the alternative? And the alternative to me is not any better, it's potentially worse. Having an empty building sitting in the front of this, you know, garage in the back. because we can't make them tear that down, we can't make them build a new house. Yeah, I'm not comfortable doing that, even if we could. I agree with, you know, I agree that, the only thing that I would add on to what you said is, the only people that lose is the couple in the house. I think the city potentially loses as well, because now you got an empty building sitting there that's not being kept up potentially. And it is, to me, to your point, the decision shouldn't have been necessarily made in the first place. So, zoning rules change probably with some of this in thought. And that's why I'm inclined to approve it, you know, and again, it's not the best situation. And if there was a better solution, a better outcome by denying it, that is better for this property, for the city of Colleyville, I'd be inclined to vote against it, but I don't see that. I don't see any outcome that's better, given all that's happened and where we're at today. It's happened. They made all the improvements to the property based on the way the zoning was at the time. They worked with the city. They didn't do anything they shouldn't have done. So that's kind of where so that's why I'm inclined to vote yes, even though I'm not comfortable with it, but I don't see that voting no providing a better outcome.
I agree 100%. I can't see if the buildings are going to remain there. And I think the Primroses got caught up, you know, some bad timing with some changes being made to the code. So, in hearing, you know, Mr. Primrose speak, it sounds like he was very transparent from what I can see with the city, and tried to do what he thought was, you know, in compliance.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No, I would just say also, I think one of the things that's hanging me up a little bit is that it's not like y'all are saying, hey, this is our family home, and we built this garage in the back of our family home. This is a place for you to store your cars and make money off a rental. So that, to me, it's certainly not the best use of that property, and I think that's what's hanging me up a little bit. It's like we built a big storage building and then we're making money off tenants, and it's everyone around that has to look at it that suffers. And I love this family, but eventually this family will move on somewhere else, and we'll be dealing with this. The city of Colleyville will be dealing with this until whenever, possibly forever. That's all.
So unless somebody else has something else to add to this overall conversation, I'll go back to the cypress trees for a minute. If we were to approve this, I'd like some reassurance that those trees planted are of a reasonable size, which contributes to the desired outcome sooner or later. And I'm not a tree expert. I'm not sure what a fully grown version of that tree is even available or what it would cost. But at the same time, I wouldn't be comfortable with, little 1.5 foot, saplings that are gonna take 15 years to grow. So if we did approve it, I would like something in there relative to the size of trees, or that they would achieve the desired outcome based on what we know of these trees in a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? It's just something like that. So it's not just getting around, we're gonna plant these, but they're not gonna grow for 20 years or 15 years or whatever. That'd be the only other thing I would add to this, but I don't know enough about those trees or how they grow or what's required to make a, reasonable, I don't believe, motion around that or add on to that.
Could we just comment to that and maybe add a note to council that tree specifications should be reviewed?
Absolutely. That can be definitely added to the motion. I guess before we get to a motion, we've got 5 commissioners only. There's been some issues identified. I just wanted to maybe ask if the applicant is okay with moving forward with a motion or if they want to request a table.
Knowing what? I mean, what?
And we
Explain
can
that a
give him
little
some
more.
direction
Yeah.
as far as what.
But explain that a little more, why only 5 matters versus?
Oh, yeah, because in order for this to receive a recommendation for approval and move on to council with that recommendation, it requires 4 affirmative votes.
So if one, okay.
So a 4-to-1 vote is okay, but a 3-to-2 vote is considered a denial. They still have the right to appeal on to city council, but it would trigger a supermajority vote.
I normally have 7.
Right, and that is 75% of the existing membership, which means 6 out of 7 would have to vote for it.
That's it,
At
for city council, yes.
Right. I just wanted to remind everybody of that.
My preference would be to hopefully you guys would come up with the right outcome here. I'm happy to work with the arborist, the city arborist, in determining what the appropriate size is. I mean, the reality is whatever the biggest I can buy is what I'm agreeing to do, so.
Okay.
This thing has gone on and on and on. We've worked really hard to try and accommodate as many parties involved in this, and, I mean, we're talking, it's 8 or 9 months that I've been dealing with this, and it's just, I can't do it forever.
Thank you. So, before we get to a motion, if I was looking at this on paper for the future, it's a whole different conversation for me. We changed from a noun to a verb for the betterment of the entire city of Colleyville. We didn't change from a noun to a verb to kick a second grader out of O.C. Taylor, okay? It's big picture. This is very unfortunate. I'm extremely disappointed in the city and how we got here. I hope we don't get here again. Very, very sad situation. So we'll have any last comments anybody has, then I'm going to ask for a motion. Yes, sir.
If I can make just one last comment. If I can make one last comment, again, I'm Gary Reeder. When we bought this property, and we would never bought this property if we weren't on the front side thinking that we could do this. So now we are where we are because things changed. Not from what our intentions were, but what the city code changed, and we're now having to abide by it. This property was, if anybody had seen it beforehand, it was full of old tires, weeds that were about 3 feet tall, old fences, all kinds of trash and litter and things. It was unsightly. And about a block, there's some commercial buildings not far from, and pretty close to us. So with this, we have brought revenue to the city for taxes and everything else that we knew to do by doing this. We thought we were doing a good thing. I guess I'm just a little surprised that the consideration would be that is this deceit? Or is this just, how do we get to this point in time? I guess for someone to vote against this, I guess that's what I'm looking at, and I guess I don't understand. Because we did something good for the city, And this is going to be our end result as well as our tenants' end result, which we've even discussed with them about eliminating some of their rent, if not all of it, for a length of time, in case something's brought up, because we are going to benefit from the rent. We've worked hard at this, and I know y'all do too. I know this is difficult, and you have to make decisions. I own a company, and I have to make hard decisions too. But I hope that the facts, I'm just trying to plead with y'all to reconsider with what we are presenting. Thank you.
Brian, can he speak?
Go ahead. And then after this one, the public hearing is closed again.
My name's John Jay again, I live at 2309 Hall Johnson, the property just adjacent to this. This, I don't think a 4,000 square foot garage adds much to property value. I think the charge of the city is to be as much family oriented as you can. The Medinas are fine to stay in that house, but if you really want to maximize revenue, then you have them build a nice house on that lot. Like, as was stated, this is a garage for cars with a rent house on the front. Anybody else in the city of Colleyville can do this in the future. They can say they're gonna build a building on any lot, do whatever they want to with it. This is setting precedent. And I'm just astounded that this is gonna go on in Colleyville. I'm really astounded. It just is mind-numbing to know that this is gonna be allowed. I think, as I said, a compromise, if they're gonna agree to build a nice house there a year from now to start construction, fine. I think that's a reasonable compromise. The family can stay there for a year, gives them a year to find somewhere to go. And there are alternatives to just saying yes. And I just thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Any final comments on any of that?
No, I think, again, we are where we're at. I don't think there wasn't anything deceitful done. I don't believe that at all. I do believe that zoning has changed after you were allowed to build your building or almost completed with it. I will say for the record that I do think it may be appropriate for us or city council, the city, to make sure that our zoning is written in such a way that would, be certain that somebody couldn't build a large garage with a very small livable area and call it a main dwelling, and that's acceptable for a residential lot. So maybe there are some additional, things that should be looked at or at least discussed and possibly changed to ensure that doesn't happen. But unless somebody else has another comment, I will make a motion to approve this case with the consideration of, the tree size being as large as they could be to achieve the desired outcome of what's the right word? I don't want to use the word I'm thinking of, but I do think that, the consideration of the largest trees being planted should be part of the motion I'll make.
Okay. Does that work for you, Ben?
Yeah, I can work with that.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Was that a good outcome? I mean, was that acceptable?
Yeah, he said he can
Motion?
make that work.
Did that work? The motion, or just the tree part work?
Yeah, it's just an approval with the screen as proposed, but utilizing the largest size tree possible. And then I think the applicant will use this guidance, and when he gets in front of council, assuming it's going there, he'll be able to present the size of tree.
Yeah, more specific information.
They can determine whether
All
that's the appropriate size or not.
Okay.
Okay. I'll open a vote. Commissioner Moore is aye. Commissioner Syed is absent. Commissioner Holt,
No.
Commissioner Matheson is absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
No.
Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
So fails to pass. Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Yep, the next item is another special use permit request. This one is for a daycare center. This is within the Winding Creek addition, located at 6412 and 6416 Colleyville Boulevard. Here's an aerial photo of the site. It is just off of Colleyville Boulevard. Again, within the Winding Creek development, that is a private drive serving these lots. It is zoned PUDC, Plan Unit Development Commercial. There are specific regulations associated with this development. And it is designated as part of the Colleyville Boulevard corridor. That's where we anticipate to see the bulk of our commercial and retail uses, office uses as well. Here's a pictometry photo of the site. So they will be, they're proposing to develop those two lots as a daycare facility. And we did highlight some of the existing language from the current Plan Unit Development C zoning. Within this zoning, it does allow for retail and office. The office is primarily on the backside or the west side of the development, and retail uses along the frontage with Colleyville Boulevard. The maximum square footage allowed for office buildings is 34,515 square feet. In looking at the approved site exhibit with the zoning, these two lots together originally planned for about 12,000 square feet of office space. This is an approximate 10,000 square foot facility being proposed. There are other elements that they will have to comply with: lighting, landscape buffering, and open space. Specifically in this section, there is a 15-foot landscape buffer to be maintained along the western boundary. So no improvements at all can be located within that 15-foot area. And then a 25-foot building setback is the minimum setback allowed. Fences and screening, a minimum 8-foot masonry screening fence constructed along the entire western boundary. That was constructed not too long ago when the wedding event venue was under construction. The developer built the wall along the entire western boundary at that time. And then there are hours of operation limitations, which is 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so they will have to comply with that regulation. Here is the zoning exhibit. So again, it's approximately 10,000 square foot facility. The parking is located primarily to the north area, but there is some in the front as well, the eastern side. And on that western boundary, the wall is on the property line or very close to the property line. That first dashed line is the 15-foot landscape easement area. And then the second dashed line is the 25-foot building setback. The proposed building is approximately 60 feet away from that western boundary. But within, well, at least on the, in between the proposed building and that western boundary, that is one of the playground areas as well as kind of their field area for other activities. But there is no restriction as far as kids being able to, I guess, utilize the area all the way to the wall. Okay. Here's the building elevations for the proposed structure. We did evaluate the articulation requirements, which is both the insets and offsets for the footprint as well as the offsets for vertical, that's up and down along the ridge or the eave line. They do meet the minimum requirements for articulation on this building. Here's a color rendering. They are utilizing different materials, as you see on this image. a landscape plan. They will be providing landscaping. It may be a little difficult to tell, but along the wall, they are installing a row of shrubs. And then they are proposing trees between the parking area and that western boundary. And then there is additional landscaping around, primarily to the front side of the building. We've also got the grading plan, drainage plan, and then this is the tree preservation plan. They are saving some trees, but based on where the footprint of the building is going and improvements that they have to make, I'd say probably the majority of the trees are being removed, but they are exempted from mitigation based on the footprint of the building where that is located. Not really a lot of other locations where they could move the building to. This is just the photo of that masonry wall that was installed fairly recently. We did send our notices out to surrounding property owners within 500 feet. We did receive 2 responses back, both in opposition. We have provided those letters to you. Staff does recommend approval of the request. It is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is, again, part of the Colleyville Boulevard corridor. For any daycare facility use, it does require a special use permit, and thus the request before you tonight. I can try and answer any questions you might have.
And a couple questions I have are probably better for the applicant to answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I will.
I have a question.
Okay, sure.
We're going to lose a lot of trees in here.
Correct.
And I understand what you said, but I didn't know that because of the way the building is situated. There is no mitigation requirement. Would they have to replace the trees?
So the one exception would be if they are considered heritage trees, then there is a mitigation requirement for those types of trees. And that is dependent on species and the diameter. Our urban forester, landscape administrator has reviewed this, and he had indicated to me that it is in compliance with our requirements found in Chapter 5 of the Land Development Code.
For them to remove those trees and not replace them? Or,
Well, if there is mitigation, they have already addressed that as well. I don't have the specifics on that,
okay,
but
okay.
yes, he has reviewed and provided comments to the applicant, and I believe that they've made all the adjustments that were asked by him.
And, okay, that's it.
I will say that we do have, assuming this goes through and does get approval, they will have to go through our formal site plan approval process, but that is a staff review and approval. This is the majority of the information that we ask for, so essentially what you're looking at is pretty much a site plan submittal.
Okay, thank you. If the applicant's here and wants to come forward, please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Stephen Brown. I'm at 6612 Josephine Street, Plano, Texas. And I'm the developer, owner of the building, as well as the general contractor. And so I know that there's been some questions on the overall facility itself. It's going to house 190 students. And there's a need for local childcare. I think there's some questions, do we need another childcare facility in the area? This is less than a mile from Creme de la Creme, which is probably the most expensive childcare in the market. And this is an alternative, a lower cost option available for the community. It meets all codes, no variances. The wall is in place in separation with the neighbors, which is heavily treed. There's no weekend activities. It's going to be compliant with landscape and tree preservation and mitigation comments based upon the arborist. We're going to meet that. The parking meets code. The traffic has limited impact in the area. I think if you look at the overall drawing or the site plan, The traffic is actually contained within the development itself and doesn't really have a dramatic impact within the community or one specific neighborhood. The building itself meets all code, height restrictions, materials, things of that nature as well. We are open, I'll tell you, could you pull up the photo where it shows the wall and the trees? You see the trees on the right-hand side, I believe is in conjunction where the neighbors are that have the most concern of the property, and that's actually over by the parking lot more so than the playground itself. So I think that does help, and we're open to placing more trees, the trees that we're required to put in along that fence line or along any of the fence line to help mitigate any concerns as far as noise is concerned. If you pull up the playground itself, the playground equipment is pushed as closely to the building as much as possible. And when you look at the number of students that are on the playground at any given time, I provided some information that hopefully is within your packet. The child times are between roughly 10 and really 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning. Each group goes out for 30 minutes at a time, and in the afternoon between 3 and 4:30. So those are the times that the children are on the playground. It's not excessive all day. It's in those confined times. And the children up to 5 years old are on the playground. So even though the facility may have space for children up to 12 years old, that's after-school program, the older children do not go outside on the playground itself. So it is the smaller kids. And really, the 2-year-old and below are on the side of the building and really are much more quiet anyway. So I hope we can address any questions or concerns. So I'd open up for questions.
I'm just curious how the building is set up. It looks like is it individual classrooms with their own separate entrances?
Exactly, yeah. Every classroom has an exit to the, out of the classroom to the outside building and is enclosed in a fence. It's according to child care code.
And they all go out at one time for
Oh,
2
no.
hours, or?
Yeah, no, it's broken up. So there's no more than the data here, 48 children on the larger kids at any given time. So they're broken up by different periods in the day.
I'm thinking of my youngest son's daycare. Is there a drop-off, or does everyone park in the parking lot and walk?
You can pull up front. There's no porte-cochere or canopy,
Okay.
if you will. So most parents will just pull up and take their child in. And we've provided some traffic data as well within the packet showing, based upon historical times, when the parents will actually drop off. And it's between early morning to about 10, and then parents start picking up in the early afternoon all the way till 6:30. So it's not a mad rush, I guess, if you could say.
So,
Go ahead.
you know, and I'm sure they're going to, I'm assuming the residents who are opposing the child care center are here to speak, and I've already read what they've put in their letters. So you spoke to, you're open to planting more trees along that fence line. Could you speak to that more?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to have tree mitigation. We're going to have to put in trees anyway. So wherever there's not existing trees, we can try and accommodate that and add to those spaces, as well as there's a row of shrubs that's going to be growing up over time. Now, the wall is 8 feet, so it is tall, which helps keep the noise back. So, but we are definitely open to putting those trees in that back space to help out.
And would you mentioned, I think your hours of operation are from 7 a.m.
To 6:30.
To 6:30. Would you be open to as part of the special use permit that would prohibit playground use until a certain time in the morning?
It is already, yes, it is 9:30 currently. And
But it's written into a special use permit where you would be prohibited to use it
I would have to
earlier than-
check with the operator themselves on that. Yeah.
Do you,
Excuse me a second. I think so. Yeah, no, at least 9 if we could,
Okay.
to help out.
But that would be something, yes, if it's part of the special use permit. that would
Yes.
Prohibit playground use until 9 a.m., that
Sure.
would be appropriate for y'all, okay?
Yes.
What about if you host an event, Christmas party or something, where you are going to have a lot of parents there at once?
Those are held at various times of the year, very few. Kevin, do you have any idea on that? You have to state your name.
Yep, sure. Kevin Patel, Triangle Engineering, 1784 West McDermott Drive, Allen, Texas, 75013. I'm the engineer of record for this project. Usually, the way they held the events is basically one classroom at a time. So that way they can accommodate all the parents as well as the staff within the parking lot. So that's why they staggered about 15 or 20 minutes gap between each classroom, even their post-graduation or whatever the events they have it.
Okay, thank you.
The current parking is over 40 spots, and in the data we show, it's usually about 27 is required for the use.
Do you, just completely went blank. Isn't that crazy? Do you have other facilities? Are you going to be the owner here?
Just of the real estate. I'm not the operator of the business
Okay.
itself.
I was just wondering if the owner has other facilities like this already in progress, or?
This current franchisee does not, but there are other Kitty Academy locations all throughout the Metroplex.
Okay, and does this franchisee have a background in this type of business, or is it a new venture?
It is a new venture.
Okay. Oh, one more thing. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Kitty Academy is about 300 plus location across the country, and it's a growing brand in Texas. I believe they have about close to 20 plus location, plus or minus here in Dallas Fort Worth. Average, they are opening about 3 to 4 locations a year in Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. Usually, it's a franchise program, so you don't necessarily have to have a educational background or teaching background. You go through the rigorous process and training by the Kitty Academy, and they'll train you to how to operate this business. It's about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 9 to 12 weeks of training, and they assist you throughout the real estate development process as well as the operation during the operation phase. I mean, every event they are there for the franchisee.
But they are franchised and they're independently run, is that correct?
That is correct, but they do have the Kitty Academy as a franchisor. They provide support to each franchisee.
Okay, okay.
As needed.
And then one more question, and I'm not sure which one of you would prefer to answer this, but that's a lot of children adjacent to these homes. And, nobody wants to tell children they have to be quiet, because, especially when they're outdoors, because that's why they're outdoors. But is there any opportunity to have some kind of fencing around the playground area so that they wouldn't encroach on those neighbors in that 15-foot setback?
It would impact child care code on the amount of space that's allowable for children on a playground. There's 80 square feet per child. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but the playgrounds are designed around child care code.
So the playground itself will accommodate the number of children that you will have out there at any time, is that what you're
Correct,
saying?
yes.
So you don't need that additional 15 feet, right?
No, we do.
We do. We have to meet the state licensing requirement. So there is a requirement 80 square feet per kid at a time. So if there is say, consider 20 kids or 40 kids at a time outside, 40 multiplied by 80, that's the playground requirement.
So you have to have that space in order to have the children outside?
Yes, ma'am.
They won't all be on the playground?
No, but let me bring something to your attention. What we are doing, there are few trees along the western property line. Those are existing trees falling within the proposed playground area. We are preserving those trees by using the tree well. So it's still part of the playground. Obviously, it's not usable. And when you put the tree well, it has to be based on the radius of the tree canopy. So in this particular case, what we have about 25 feet before we have any playground structure. Generally, these kids play around the playground structure. Our playground structure is 25 feet away from the western property line. Right next to the western property line, we have the shrubs and existing preserved trees. So it's, to meet the state code, we have to have that size of the playground. But most of the playground most of the time, kids will be playing around the playground structure, which is 25 feet away from the western property line. And teachers, as well as the Kiddie Academy, encourage kids to stay away from the trees, as they may be allergic to something. So, that's basically the requirement. So yes, you do see a large playground, but usable area on that playground, it's limited.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
The public hearing is open. I have 2 cards. Susan Reynolds wishes to speak in opposition.
My name is Susan Reynolds. I live at 6417 Kingston, Colleyville. Good evening. This is way past my bedtime. I'm one of the homes that's ground zero for this preschool. Our backyard is basically, we've lived here for 8 years. When we bought it, it was just dirt in the backyard with a few trees, and we have landscaped, put in a pool. It's become our sanctuary. We enjoy being outside, and we always knew at some point there would be office buildings, something behind our home, not a preschool. I have nothing against children. I worked at a preschool. I taught 3-year-olds. I've raised 5 children. But our neighborhood and the homes that are directly behind this, we're semi-retired. We're retiring. This is going to be our home that we're going to live in, till we leave this earth. And we've, when I look at this preschool, and I look at the parking lot, I mean, it holds at least 45 cars. And I don't know, within McCain to Hal Johnson, any single business has a parking lot that big, except for the chapel that's been built in the same area, and that's yet to be determined what the noise level of that's going to be. We're already having to deal with that, and that hasn't opened yet. But what I want to say about the children, like you were saying, they play. I've been yard duty. They scream, they yell. The wall has no bearing on the noise. In fact, the wall has amplified Highway 26 even before they opened all 6 lanes. You can hear it more. But that's not so bad because that's a constant hum. But with kids, they're screaming and laughing and playing as they should be. That's what they do. That's what recess is about. But not so close to our homes. In fact, you talk about the buffer. Well, it's not a level buffer. It's not 15 feet out. It's slanted. So they're even closer to us. And the trees, I don't know if you can put the trees back up with the wall. I guess my concern was, you had talked about, because the building was so big, that the trees had to be removed. And I don't know if you're talking about the ones on the left. Are those the ones that have to be removed? Because the arborist came through and was marking all the trees and said, no, these have to stay. And in fact, on the other side of the wall that they built, in between our fence and the wall, we have about 3 feet. That's no man's land. And there's 2 oak trees at each end that the arborist tagged. And he said I couldn't cut them down because they're oak trees. Well, those are oak trees and he's tagged them. So I'm hoping that they stay because that was the whole purpose. I don't know if that was, and so I'm trying to, and I guess I just feel like in listening to this building and that it's so big, 10,000 square feet, I don't know if that's the size of the Colleyville market down the street. And then they're trying to stuff these playgrounds in here with 190 kids, and they talk about, oh, well, they all won't be at the same time. Well, that's even worse, because they're rotating on a 15, 30-minute basis, and so we're going to hear noise from 9:30 to noon, and then we're going to hear noise constant at the other section in the afternoon. So it's not like, I'd rather have them all come out at once and get it all over with. And in the process with the cars too, coming and going, that's 190 kids being delivered. And I know with the daycares and the preschools I've worked at, it wasn't like public school where they all come at the same time and they all leave at the same time and then they're done. With a preschool, they come and go depending on how many hours the parent needs them there. And it's a constant flow. And so I just hope you as a council consider, as homeowners that have been there, you know, we're not against building. It's just not the right place for a preschool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brad Hildeth wishes to speak in opposition.
My name's Brad Hildreth. I live at 6409 Kingston. And this photo here, he's right, they did construct a big wall up there. If you notice at the end how it runs down and it stops, that's halfway through my backyard. So you're running down, I got 50 feet of this concrete wall. Then I have 50 feet of original chain link fence, and that's the first thing we do. In the morning, we'll get up, we'll go outside, we'll have our coffee, and that's what we look at. When they were trying to sell this originally, they started knocking everything down, and in our yard too, we got a taste of what it felt like to not have a barrier there at all. And luckily, some of that's grown back, but you know, what you don't see, you know, you can see a real nice building, and I'm just gonna tell you what happened to us. We had a dog, and he passed away a little bit ago, but Copperhead bit him over here at this creek out here. And everybody's talking about coming and developing this. Well, I'd be really worried for those little kids coming down there. He got blindsided by this, and you know, I had to take him up to Baylor Hospital, not Baylor, but Stillwater, Oklahoma, to the vet college. And you know, after a $10,000 bill, we got to go ahead and take him home. But you know, she's right, and everything she said is something I'd like to say, but I'm too old to remember it and repeat it anymore. So. But, you know, this side of the product, I believe, you know, move it across the road, move it closer to the road. There's plenty of places in Colleyville that are still trying to develop. Several places might be a better opportunity, I'm sure. But, you know, again, I'm going to go back to the fence. This is when they did the last project. They took it down, and I asked them, well, why don't you run it all the way down to the end of my property line? Well, we don't own that. Well, that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen here. They're going to take a wall, run off perpendicular off to that one, I believe, probably. And I don't know if they plan on damaging any of that in the back there at all. But, you know, that's going to, it just creates a, I guess, just kind of headaches when you feel like, you know, you're trying to get something done, say, well, we're held to these constraints right here, so we can't do that. So, you know, but again, she's right. You know, the amount of noises that's going to bring to our area. We moved there 10 years ago, so we're ready to retire about a year and a half. Dad is not sleeping in anymore, doesn't look like, if they move that there. Anyway, I didn't plan on coming down here to talk to y'all, but, and I wish more folks in our neighborhood would. I'm sure they would if they knew about it. Maybe everybody didn't get to see it, but I do hope that you consider, and maybe let's try to look at another place that'd be more feasible or proper for a daycare like that. You know, it's, again, I got nothing against kids. I got, you know, I have 142 and 122 now, and we've been through all the heartaches with them and the war in, and I think we just need some peace in our life right now. But thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. And when you're done, if you wouldn't mind filling out a speaker card once you've spoke. Oh, you got one? Okay. Okay. If you state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Frey Webster. I live at 112 Quail Run here in Colleyville, 22-year resident of Colleyville. Been around for a long time. Remember when Kmart was here and it went out of business, and we had a shopping center that was empty for several years, and had several friends over the years on the council. And, you know, when Colleyville was struggling, wondering how we could attract business to help generate the sales tax base to do the improvements and the infrastructure that we need here in Colleyville. So I am also the developer of this land. I dealt with Mr. Brad on his fence, and he is exactly right. He asked us why we didn't carry the fence all the way down to the end of his property, and it's because our property stopped there and we did not have the right to go beyond that point. And we explained that to him, and he agreed and understood it at that point. So we worked with each of the homeowners. When someone came out and wasn't sure if the fence was quite right, we had it resurveyed. We had the city out, we looked at it, we made sure everything was correct. Dealt with Caleb numerous times, walked the property with him in regards to the trees. We ended up leaving significantly more trees than what were on our tree survey, and that was per Caleb and I having conversations, because we love the trees there as well. So some of the trees that are actually on that property are not on the tree survey because they're not required to be there. And he and I have walked that and talked that numerous times. That particular piece of property, those particular lots, require around 70 inches of trees to be planted on them, just as part of the tree mitigation for a building being put there, to answer your question from a little while ago. So there's a lot of things that have been put in place to make this happen. You know, back in 2000, there was an ordinance passed, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was when a PUD was put in place on this land, and it gave a daycare by right to this place. And then in 2008, that was redone, and they adjusted the tree mitigation slightly, and they reaffirmed that original ordinance that the daycare was there by right. And then in 2009, when the current PUD was redone and it was put in place, it was done as a daycare was only by special use permit, because that was the way the city was going. And that's the way many cities have changed, and it's good for all of us that we do this, that we have to come forward. And when Mr. Brown put in a contract to buy this land, and I explained to him that that was the case, and there was some confusion what PUD applied, and I sent him a copy of the PUD, and he looked at it, and we discussed that, and I told him, I said, you need to make sure that you take in consideration the neighbors out back, make sure that you put any extra landscaping that you can back there, use any trees. We've left extra trees. If you can leave them in your design, you should do that. Make sure that you don't encroach in any way, form, or fashion on any of the building setbacks. And so they designed a building that. And so they're not asking for any type of a variance on the building. All they're asking for is the SUP. And as a long-term resident of Colleyville, as the developer, I have a biased opinion, you know that. But I believe it's a good thing. I believe it's good that the daycare is off the main thoroughfare. It's not on 26, and it's on a private drive that loops through this property. It keeps it safer for the children. It keeps it safer for the parents dropping off and picking up. It keeps it safer for those of us driving up and down 26, so we don't have cars stopping and turning in and out so much. So I believe it's a good thing for this to be approved, and I would ask you to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would y'all like to come up and address any of that? No?
I want to bring a couple points to your attention. So the western fence for this particular track is located about 45 feet from any of the improvements on those two houses or houses along the western side. And then in addition to that, we have a 25 feet. That's where our playground sits. So about 70 feet separation between the swimming pools on their backyard and the trees, and then the playground structure. That's one. The second thing I want to bring it to your attention, this particular development will generate a significant amount of property tax at the same time of 20 to 25 permanent jobs at City of Colleyville. So those are the points I wanted to bring it to your attention.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Come on up to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
Susan Reynolds, 6417 Kingston. They talk about the playground being a certain distance and planting more trees. That doesn't respect that. I can hear at night the events going on down in Colleyville. That's how sound travels. And I am going to be probably from where you're sitting to the back is where the wall and the playground. I don't know of any trees or bushes that are going to prevent hearing children playing and screaming, because they do, they scream. My mom lives behind a daycare, and it's with a church, but they go out and play, and you know when they're out to recess, because they're playing and screaming and having fun. And these gentlemen aren't going to be there to make sure, because when the school starts, they're going to have whatever session that they're going to have their own. As a preschool teacher, I set up my own curriculum. We had playtime when I said we were going to have playtime. I know they're going to be a little bit more structured, but there's no limits as to what they're going to do outdoors. And it seems like they're trying to fit an awful lot of children in such a small space because the building is so huge. And we're going to have to live with it. They're going to go on and build something else, and they don't even live in the community. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. We'll open up commissioners' discussion. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
Well, I have, it's kind of a rhetorical question in a way, but for Ben, why is there for daycare centers, what's the intent of needing a special use permit versus just allowing them?
I don't know that I can answer that. It's in the land development code on the permitted use chart. In our CPO, our professional office district, our neighborhood commercial, our CC1, CC2, and CC3, all of those districts, for a daycare facility or a daycare center, it requires a special use.
Yeah, I just wonder what, there was, I know it wasn't a fair question, but there was a reason, and if like noise mitigation potentially was a reason why it was added as a special use.
I'm sure that's probably one of them. Maybe it was traffic, or maybe just assuring that, all of those elements together were accounted for appropriately in their design. And so some of the benefits that we have with this location is we have a PUDC that has additional regulations on top of what we have in the land development code. Those hours of operations. We always required the masonry wall, but there's the landscaping required next to the wall, which is not something in our land development code. And then, so that 15-foot buffer area, and then I think the other added benefit is that it is on an internal private driveway system rather than a public street system. I don't know how you address any type of mitigation for noise other than walls and landscaping. I guess the only other thing is distance, but.
So, okay. I'm going to say this as well. Normally the way we go through this process is there's a work session meeting where we kind of get introduced to the request, ask questions, talk about it, and then 2 weeks later we have our meeting where we kind of go through the process again and vote on it. Obviously with, the whole pandemic situation, this is a little different. We're kind of doing it all in one night. I would be more comfortable, if need be, I'll ask more questions and vote tonight. I personally would be more comfortable doing a little bit more research, looking into things a little bit more, and postponing this by 2 weeks, but it's my opinion. I'd feel more comfortable doing that, given that we're doing it all in one night, which is not normal.
I have a question. What would not need an SUP? to go there?
Just a general office type use.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How about a drive-through? Would
That
that
would
need
not
an
be
issue?
allowed,
It would not be allowed.
no.
But a restaurant?
The,
Good
if I
question.
go back to the first slide of the PUD regulations. So the purpose is for office and retail uses. And then in 3, the following land uses shall be permitted within land development code. This says all office uses. One thing that we didn't include is that if it does have retail, it will have to be along the frontage with Colleyville Boulevard. So just those properties there at the front are authorized to have the retail. And so with this being office, in looking at the land development code for daycare centers, since it's a special use permit in all of those districts, including our professional office district, thus the request for the SUP tonight, even if it had frontage on Colleyville Boulevard, it also would require the special use permit, because it's a special use permit all the way up into the C3 district.
So I think I might have interrupted her question, I apologize for that, but what other businesses could go there?
Really, at this point, it'd just be for office-type uses, here on the ones that are here on the backside, especially the ones adjacent to the residential properties. So those are permitted by right without special use permit or other additional approvals from any body. So that would include like your accountants or, just any of your professional type offices, but it would also include, I believe it would also include medical offices too. And a lot of those are a little more traffic heavy than a general professional office because of the patients coming in and out and the quick turnaround.
But
The office really is all that's permitted at this point.
other types of businesses could try to obtain an SUP to go in there. It doesn't mean they can't, it just means they would have to get an SUP.
Right. Yeah, so daycare centers, for whatever reason in the past, it was identified as one of those uses that it's not necessarily prohibited, it's just that it has to go through this additional approval.
Okay.
And I think, with special use permits, we call them special use permits, but they're also in other communities called conditional use permits or even something else. The main aspect is making sure that there's compatibility with the area, and you can add conditions as part of the approval in order to accommodate or get to that level of compatibility with the area. Now, maybe a lot of that's already been taken care of with the PUD in place, but if not, then we can add those as conditions.
I was just thinking, like, if some other type of business decided they wanted to come to Colleyville and they identified that spot and it wasn't office space, could they try to obtain an SUP to go in there?
That would depend on the use itself. If it's one that is special use with the office district that we have, our CPO or professional office district, some uses don't even have an option in our true office district.
Okay.
This one does. So like we talked about a restaurant with drive-through, that's not even an option in our professional office district. And since these properties are intended for office, I would say that that's not something that they can even request.
Okay. Okay.
So hopefully that made sense. But,
Yeah, it does.
okay.
I have, excuse me, I have a couple of questions, and probably maybe the applicant could answer. About the drop-off, since there won't be any covered area to protect the students and their parents from the weather when they bring them in, how far is the entrance from the drop-off area? Was that specified in the plan that I missed it?
Well, this is the best exhibit to see. There is that row of parking in front, and then you do have a row of parking there on the north side as well. So that, I'd say that's probably approximately 10 feet.
So, okay, so, but if they were gonna just drop a child off, would they, and there's cars parked there, would the kids be walking through that lane where cars are parked?
Yeah, I'd say the majority of the drop-off will be on those 2 rows of parking spaces adjacent to the buildings, and the employees would probably park off a little bit in that northern parking lot area.
Yeah, you want to let them address it? I mean, might as well.
Yeah.
Since we're here.
So the staff would park far away as possible from the building itself. And so both entrances, that those spots will be utilized for parents coming in. And they do walk their children in. They just don't let them out.
Drop them off?
Yeah, they do drop them off. And within the packet itself, it's got some estimated drop-off times and how many, based upon the use of this building.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, are there any operative centers within our area that we might take a look at if we were going to wait on our voting?
You know where the closest one is? Yeah, we know they're Frisco.
It's already operating?
I don't think there's one in Keller, but there are some in Frisco and various other parts of the city. We could provide that data.
Well, and we can look it up too. I didn't want to get on my phone and start trying to find it.
Sure.
Just wondering if there was something in the area we could maybe.
Sure.
And there is the closest one is in Fort Worth. It's at the
Alliance.
Alliance, okay.
While y'all are up here, if I can ask, it sounds like there's some consideration from some of these commissioners concerning possibly delaying this a couple of weeks to give everybody a chance to get their minds around it. We could do this a couple different ways. We could vote tonight if we get a motion. And Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, if we deny it, you can appeal it to council. Or we can table it and we can address it after our work session that's in 2 weeks. That'd be up to you guys.
If we go in 2 weeks, do we make the next council session 2 weeks after that? Proposed. I know the dates are kind of
Right.
fluid at this point.
Yeah.
Given the situation, what we've been dealing with the last couple months, yes, I believe that we can do that. The meeting will be 2 weeks from today, so that'd be the 25th. And then I believe the council meeting is June 2nd, so I believe that just gives me enough time to make sure it's on the June 2nd council, which is what it's scheduled for right now. Oh, the 20th. Oh, okay. It ends up being, that's right, I forgot. In
Yeah.
2 weeks is Memorial Day, so we move it to Tuesday instead of Monday.
But it still applies, you could still.
Yeah, it's still the same situation, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If we could stay on that path, that would be
Yeah.
acceptable. And I don't know how we engage on list of questions or things of that nature, so.
We would route that through Ben in his office.
Okay.
And then we'll be back in 2 weeks and they can come back.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like that's the direction we're going. If you want us to give them direction right now for anything that you want them to come back with, we can do that. Otherwise, you can coordinate with us and we can pass it on to them.
Okay.
And then we would have another open meeting in 2 weeks that you obviously are more than welcome to come back to and answer additional questions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Assuming we table it, when we hear it in approximately 2 weeks on the Tuesday, we will go through this entire process again when we convene our regular agenda. So including the public hearing as well.
Right.
Anything else?
I have a quick question for you. I know we've talked a lot about, noise levels. What about lighting? Are there any kind of lights in the parking lot?
We'll meet all Colleyville code, probably dark sky rules, things of that
Okay.
nature. So they will all comply with the commercial codes.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
That's what I was going to ask about the lighting too, but if all possible, I don't know if y'all ever can do this, if we invite you to come down and look at what we're fixing to have, built there. Please come over to our houses, and we're glad to show you the backyard and what we think's fixing to happen to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, can I get a motion to table this till the P and Z meeting on the 26th? Well, I guess we'll hold a special meeting after the work session to address this one topic. Okay?
I will motion that we table case ZC 09-008 until the next meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Moore is aye. Syed, absent. Holt,
Aye.
Matheson, absent. Cook,
Aye.
Bevel,
Aye.
Bond.
Aye.
All right. Before we go into this next round, can we push this off till next time?
We can.
Our CBD store is that urgent, so maybe we could,
No, I would,
Yes. Yes.
I don't know how she's gonna.
depends on
vote
the
now.
person.
Depends on We need to do this tonight.
So we've got this item as well as the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Language for sidewalks. We can table them to the 26th as well, and
Well, do you,
just try and follow the same.
do you have an idea what's on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, as far as?
Nothing. I mean,
Okay,
as far as
so-
the meeting goes,
Yeah.
I mean, there,
We did have
for
a
the,
middle deadline today for new cases coming up.
yeah,
So we have 3 specific use permits, all dealing with fence locations.
okay.
Is that all that we got?
So we'll do that in the work session.
We'll
And
do
then
that
we'll
in the
come
work
back and
session.
do these 3 things in
We
the,
could do these 3 things.
let's do that. Let's go.
Okay, so then we will need a
Yeah.
motion to table for both of these items. Separately, I mean. Do one and take a vote, and then do the next one, take a vote.
Okay. Let's,
So we've already, so we're done with the one we just did.
yeah.
Moving on to the next one.
We're gonna move on to
What a good idea.
the consideration of definitions, special land use standards for CBD stores. If I could get a motion to table that.
I'm looking for the case number.
Yeah, I was.
I don't think there is a case number.
Okay, well then I make a motion that we table the special land use
You can say item 4.
item
Yeah.
4J.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. And we'll take a vote. Commissioner Moore is aye. Syed absent. Holt,
Aye.
Matheson absent. Cook,
Aye.
Bevel,
Aye.
Bond.
Aye.
All right. Let's get one more thing done here, which is number
4K.
4J, 4K.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table item 4K, amendments to Chapter 9 until the meeting on the 26th.
In a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Moore, aye. Syed absent. Holt,
Aye.
Matheson absent. Cook,
Aye.
Bevel,
Aye.
Bond.
Aye.
Meeting's over.
Long day.
Yeah, we'll see some people show up next time, so.
After the 45-minute delay or whatever that was, already done.
I want y'all to know that one, this dumb old lady.
Oh, we,
No.
not blaming anybody, or you, but.
It was weird, because it was fully working fine.
No, whatever, not me, I'm not
But we
thinking
even
that.
tested it on Friday, and she was able, it was